Imagine sitting down to write a short essay, but there's a lot of information to digest, you're on a short timeline, and you're not entirely sure what the readers want. That's how I remember feeling when I first started writing observations after a day in the backcountry. Today I am going to highlight key concepts you may see or use when discussing conditions in the field. Then we'll review how to share helpful information and find ways to fine-tune your submissions. As Flathead Avalanche's intern last winter, I developed a structured approach for submitting observations that prioritized efficiency and consistency in reporting key environmental factors. So my goal is that after this presentation, you'll find more confidence in reading, seeing, and submitting observations, while remembering that even brief submissions or just a few photos can be incredibly valuable. An observation is the use of your senses or instruments to gather information. The most obvious place we run into this is when we're outside, absorbing details from our surroundings. The best observers use multiple senses, including sight with hearing and touch. You can find observations submitted by others on Flathead Avalanche's website or on the Avy app on your phone under the Observations tab. The Daily Forecast Bulletin often references relevant observations to build context and connection with what you're reading, while building credibility behind their conclusions. In the winter backcountry, there are many elements to weigh, and observations are just one piece of that puzzle. Information that you gather throughout the day can be used to locally confirm or even adjust the hazards listed in the bulletin. A recent study compiling 2 years of survey data from Rec Level 1 Avalanche course participants found that few participants take advantage of observations. That used to be me too. But since then, I've discovered they can be powerful learning tools, connecting us to the Avalanche community and helping us make better decisions when we head out. We're going to start at the beginning with some very basic terms. This is meant to be a quick refresher to dust those cobwebs off your snow brains or give you a place to start on what you should be looking for. The daily bulletin often guides us on what to look for, but flexibility and adaptability are necessary to incorporate new information as the day unfolds. We always want to be looking for avalanches, debris piles, and crowns. Collapsing in the upper snowpack, sometimes called whumping, may be accompanied by an audible sound. Shooting cracks extend beyond the length of your skis, board, or sled, and indicate that you have all the ingredients for triggering an avalanche, but the slope was just not steep enough to slide. Wind loading is the transport of snow by wind. Solar radiation refers to the sun's energy and is important when it starts to affect surface layers. A cornice is an overhanging mass of snow that's formed by wind deposition on ridge lines and terrain inflections. Settlement is the consolidation of snow. Those fragile, feathery crystals that grow on the snow's surface on cold, clear, and calm nights are surface hoar. Facets are loose, sugary grains that don't bond well with others. They form when there's a strong temperature gradient or temperature differences within the snowpack. Pinwheeling is when wet or moist snow rolls downslope, creating a spiral structure. And crusts are hard layers referred to as sun crusts, melt freeze crusts, rain crusts, and wind crusts. The real challenge and art lies in deciding when these factors matter most. Uncertainty represents what we don't yet know about the snowpack stability. Spotting key factors, sometimes referred to as red flags, can help us turn that uncertainty into understanding. If you're out riding your snowmobile and it starts to puff way too much smoke, you know you've got a problem. White smoke is a clear indicator that you've blown a head gasket. Other smoke? Well, that's going to take a little more diagnosis to understand what's really going on. Similarly, some red flags offer direct evidence that the snowpack is unstable, while others only provide partial information and require more investigation. starting with the most important warning sign are recent avalanches and other signs of instability, such as collapsing, audible whoops, and cracking. These indicate that the snowpack is unstable and there is low uncertainty associated with their interpretation. These signs may immediately adjust your travel plans to avoid avalanche terrain and runout zones. The others flag potential problems, but with much higher uncertainty. New loading, depending upon the amount of snowfall, precipitation intensity, and wind speeds, can all elevate hazard, but it's heavily dependent on the stability of the old snowpack and surface snow before loading. Rapid warming from solar radiation, rain within the past 48 hours, and rising air temperatures can all weaken the bonds and elevate hazard. These show that the bonds within the snowpack may be deteriorating. How the snow surface looks, feels, and sounds can highlight relevant clues as to where developing weak layers or recently formed slabs are located. Noticing these changes helps identify where the hazard is increased or increasing. Poor snowpack structure refers to the factors below, such as weak layers, abrupt hardness transitions, and certain snow grain types and sizes. The overall hazard depends upon how the layers are interacting under the current conditions. The power of stability evaluation comes from the interpretation of this information. So let's practice. I'll set the scene. You can feel the cold wind on your face, you're soaking in the winter magic, and you just stop to assess the terrain around you. I'll give you a moment to think about what you notice and how does it affect your uncertainty in the stability of the snowpack. All right. You may have pointed out these small, wet, loose avalanches originating from rocks, indicating that the snowpack in those locations was recently unstable. Maybe you pointed out the effects of wind, shown by the textured wind in the front or by the cornice. Looking at the sky, it's a sunny day. So I interpret this slope as being recently wind-loaded, has been affected by some warming, but it has the potential for increased hazard from additional solar radiation. Now that we've reviewed what to find, we'll talk about where you can share it. With Flathead Avalanche and other avalanche centers, there's many ways to submit an observation. You can do so on the Avi app on your phone. There's a long form or a short form at the Flathead Avalanche website, and you can text or email the forecasters directly here. The best part is there's no wrong way to share. Jot down a few sentences, submit a few pictures, and submit it in whatever of these ways is easiest for you. Every little bit you submit helps the forecast team better serve our community. You'll be helping yourself in the process as well. Summarizing and scribing our observations is essentially an act of reflection on key findings from your day. Self-reflection enhances learning by more consistently identifying hazards and reviewing your decisions from the day, just like an athlete who watches the film after the game. With practice, drawing consistent conclusions from the processes that led to the current snowpack conditions will become inherent. Your communication is going to get better by doing it more as well. And once we talk about understanding your audience, you'll also write a little more for them. Forecasters and the public both use your observations, but they do so a little differently. Forecasters combine weather station data with field observations and the weather forecast to build a daily avalanche bulletin. Our observations help them confirm or question their mental picture of the current conditions. We add more data to the 1.2 million acre forecast zone in the Flathead area. Forecasters will sometimes call it out in the forecast discussion when they have no observations from elevation bands and regions. Observations, no matter how short, can fit with what a forecaster currently understands or help them realize where they still need more information. The community and visiting recreationalists are going to use your observations a little differently. We enjoy seeing what others are finding and learning how they interpret information. Insights into specific locations can help others choose where to go, or they can gather details relating to the snow quality or snow stability. Observations can also add details relating to trailhead access. If there was some dirt sledding required or a debris pile in the road, that is helpful to know. With a better understanding of your audience, let's dive further into how you can improve your submissions. Starting with the easiest, but arguably most important, is the inclusion of photos or videos. Both forecasters and the general public receive great benefit from timely submission of recent avalanche activity, especially in visual form. If you have time when adding photos, you can include descriptions and annotations. Things to note in the description include where, specifically the aspect, elevation, and location, and what is highlighted in the picture. For example, this is the hardness profile on a northerly slope at 6,500 feet in the Swan Range. Annotation, which I often just do on the photo editing in my cell phone, can include labeling, highlighting of crowns, arrows pointing at debris piles, or circling avalanches. Anything that's going to allow your viewer to more quickly tune in to what you're showing with the picture. If you want more inspiration or to learn more, you can follow the Flathead Avalanche social media. What's posted there is what the forecasters want to see more of. It is absolutely acceptable to only include photos as your submission, but written components can be added to include more details. So let's start with how to fine-tune your writing. Put the most important messaging at the beginning of your writing. This is often finding or not finding instabilities. Use as few words as possible as it increases readability. You may notice that forecasters' observations can be really detailed. For them and other professionals, it serves as an operational record, so do not let that intimidate you. Useful observations do not need to be lengthy. From the hindcast data, where forecasters go back and review the season, they voted that this observation was universally most useful. It filled in gaps that would have otherwise been missing that day, and it did so through 3 sentences, 3 photos, and was submitted after a drive. Use terms you're comfortable with as it supports accurate messaging. Remember to communicate timely and actively. I find that we experience something we can share most days. Providing numerical values eliminates the room for interpretation. So if you write a lot of new snow out there, could be improved if you wrote about 8 inches of new snow. I know it takes time to submit observations, so here's some things you can do to make it a little quicker. Avoid repetition. This applies to within your own messaging and other observations submitted before yours. The observation forms can have multiple sections. If you write something in one, there is no need to repeat it later in the process. When going to submit an observation, you can review others posted that day, and if you experience similar findings, you can say so to make it easier for the forecasters to read and quicker on yourself. But you do want to highlight if you did find anything different. For example, you could write, "We experienced similar findings as noted in other observations, but we found higher sensitivity in wind slaps on northerly aspects. An observation is meant to be a fact-based report of what you saw and experienced that day. Emotion can be added if it's applicable to the here and now, such as a weak layer that you're concerned about. But avoid speculating about how that weak layer may react to an incoming storm. Do not use long paragraphs as it's incredibly hard to read. Stick to 1 to 2 sentences in each paragraph when you're submitting. Avoid using the observation network to compete to be the longest, funniest, or coolest. Hopefully these tidbits will give you more confidence in pressing that submit button. As the Flathead Avalanche director says, quote, "Forecasters are like vampires who can never get enough blood," end quote. Thanks, Blaise. Priority times to submit are when forecaster uncertainty is the highest. This most often is associated with before and during changing conditions. Report all avalanches, especially near misses, incidents, and accidents. These do not need to be public, and a forecaster will never shame anyone, as they understand firsthand how embarrassing it may feel. Their job is to forecast for human-triggered avalanches, so that information is critical to them. How did your planned terrain meet your expectations? Did you back off your objective? How aggressively did you travel through the terrain? They want to know. Forecasters will also call it out in the forecast discussion, asking for more. So if you see that, get inspired and submit. Throughout the season, our observation needs evolve as the snowpack progresses. In the early and late season, information relating to snowpack totals and trailhead access can be useful, but as the season continues, our observations become much more dynamic. In the early winter, our snowpack is relatively simple. We're primarily focusing on the depth and metamorphism of basal facets and melt-freeze crusts. Then, with more layering, things get challenging with more snow, additional wind loading, and temperature swings. We start paying attention to near-surface faceting and elevations of rain crusts after our first widespread rain events. There is variability throughout the regions that we really want to capture. Catchy names like January Junk Show may be used to help us track weak layer complexes. And then we ride our way into late winter. Whew, things get complex with additional avalanche hazards, glide cracks, larger cornices, sun crusts. The spatial variability of stability can be affected by spotty surface hoar layers, sun crusts on solar aspects, or pockets of grapple. Eventually, we start to pay attention to factors relating to wet snow problems, as that becomes our primary concern as we trend our way through winter. The most important thing to realize is that our snowpack is constantly changing, so we always need new observations, and the information that gets included is going to vary accordingly. If that avalanche of information did not bury you, then let's dig into what's really holding you back from pressing that submit button. With little introspection, I was able to make this list, as I am guilty of all of these. Luckily, there's a way to overcome them. If you didn't think you have time, well, now you know. In less than 30 seconds, you can submit your pictures on the Avi app. If you did not think your observations would be useful, I understand. Forecasters actually find it very challenging to drop danger levels. So even on moderate or level 2 days, submitting an observation mentioning that there was nothing going on is still going to be useful for them. If you're not interested in public visibility, you can hide your name or your post from the public. You can always reach out to the forecasters directly. If you're not wanting to share your secret spots, we get it. So we recommend that you select a highway spot or trailhead location that's near where you were. Just make sure you select a spot within the highlighted boundaries of the different regions. Otherwise, your observation will just be floating off in the ether. And if you're not sure where to start, That's where my observation tool comes in handy. I created this simple framework for efficiently documenting and remembering what you experienced that day. This is not the only useful way to submit an observation, but it was based on our forecaster's current best practices. I'll quickly go over it, and there will be a QR code at the end of the presentation. So in the Avi app, when you're submitting an observations, you can write in the field notes section. Remember, you're writing in short sentences and splitting up the spacing between those sentences for readability. You can open with an optional sentence relating to your goal for the day or give an overview of the terrain you traveled and were able to view. Then you want to include the important part, starting with signs of instability, or you can write no signs of instability. Then if you found factors relating to the snow surface reactions, conditions at the snow surface, and then highlight differences and changes you experienced through space and time as the day progressed. If you want, in this area, you can summarize briefly what you found when you dug into the snow. Then you can wrap it up with a conclusion sentence that again is optional, summarizing the riding conditions or notating how you traveled in the terrain. If you want to be more detailed, on the website long form, there is a separate snowpack section that you can enter snow pit data so it does not dilute your primary messaging. It helps to understand how the observation network has evolved over time. During the 2014-2015 season, the center introduced a formal observation network to gather more information to support improved advisory accuracy. During that first season, 106 public observations were submitted. Still true to this day, it was created as there are so many of us and we recreate in such a wide geographic area. Fast forward to last season, and we submitted 451 public observations with 1,028 images. These came from 139 individuals. Only 21% of those individuals were women. 61 of them utilized the Avi app, which was the second highest for any Avalanche center. The hindcasting data shows that our submissions for observations improves the advisory accuracy. So hindcasting is when at the end of the season, forecasters go back and assess the avalanche conditions after the fact, so they can compare their forecasted danger levels that they picked on that day with what the danger levels actually ended up being. On days when the hindcasters did not agree with the original forecast, there was an average number of 2.6 observations submitted. On days when the hindcasters did agree with the original forecast, there was an average of 3.1 observations submitted. So this shows that when forecasters have more observations from the previous day, the forecast is more likely to be in alignment with what the forecasted danger level was compared to the actual danger level at the end of the season. As the snow continues to pile up this season, I know your observations will too. So it doesn't need to feel like writing an essay. It does not need to be perfect. You can jot down a few sentences, submit a few pictures. Taking time to submit what you share is not just going to help yourself, but you'll help the forecasters and the entire community too. Thank you for listening. You can utilize this QR code to get the observation guide, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.